The 18-wheeler cut through Tennessee darkness like a phantom, Memphis rising before Thaddeus Ryker like a neon-lit promise of home. 6 months on the road had carved new lines in his weathered face, each mile of highway etching its own story. His phone's sudden vibration shattered the pre-dawn quiet, Savannah's name glowing accusingly on the screen. Her voice carried unfamiliar tremors as she spoke of doctor's appointments and conversations that couldn't wait. Behind her words, Thad caught the sounds that set his military instincts blazing. Muffled voices, metallic clatter, secrets trying to stay hidden. 20 years of marriage had taught him every shade of his wife's fear. His craftsman home emerged from the morning mist like a stage set for tragedy. The changes screamed warnings to his combat-trained senses. Missing porch flowers, Meadow's hastily parked Honda, shadows that fell wrong across the manicured lawn. Savannah met him at the door, a ghost of herself, auburn hair pulled severe, hollow cheeks, dark-circled eyes. Her welcome kiss tasted of wine and deception. Inside, the house held its breath. Beneath aggressive cleaning products lurked masculine cologne where none should exist. The living room told stories in subtle disruptions. Misaligned pillows, a hidden wine glass stained with his wife's lipstick, a man's magazine jutting from couch cushions like evidence at a crime scene. Savannah's hands shook as she wiped already spotless counters, neck tendons straining with unspoken tension. Meadow burst in from supposed swim practice, her hair suspiciously dry, transformed from daddy's girl to secretive stranger. Her phone buzzed constant warnings as she retreated upstairs, leaving behind thin excuses and thicker secrets. Evening stretched the tension to breaking point, dinner becoming a battlefield of silent accusations. Wine trembled in Savannah's glass while Meadow's phone vibrated like a timer on a bomb. The facade shattered with a single word: Roman. Savannah's wine glass slipped, bleeding red across white tablecloth as she whispered explanations about a personal trainer at Elite Fitness. Her eyes fixed anywhere but her husband's face as she spoke of health and absence and things that didn't add up. Upstairs, Phoenix, their 15-year-old son, slammed his door against the tsunami of family secrets. Thad surveyed these strangers wearing familiar faces, feeling 6 months of absence crushed down like artillery fire. Tomorrow's doctor's appointment loomed dark on the horizon, but tonight's unspoken truths already thundered through his home. As Memphis darkness claimed the house, Thad moved through rooms with tactical precision, cataloging evidence of lives lived in his absence. Every drawer slightly askew, every misplaced item, every trace of foreign cologne built a case for coming war. Behind him, urgent whispers between wife and daughter floated through vents like battle plans. His homecoming wasn't an end to separation. It was an opening salvo in a conflict that would leave no survivors. Dr. Indigo Frost's office breathed wealth and discretion, all mahogany panels and hushed voices. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, casting soft shadows across the designer furniture that spoke of careful taste and deep pockets. This wasn't their usual clinic. This was the kind of place that kept secrets for those who could afford silence. Thad's military-trained mind catalogued every detail as they waited. The fresh flowers on the desk, likely changed daily. The expensive air purifier humming in the corner. The way Savannah's manicured nails dug crescents into her palms. She sat perched on the edge of her chair like a bird ready for flight, her designer dress a shield of propriety that couldn't quite hide her trembling. Dr. Frost appeared precisely on time, a tall woman with prematurely silver hair and eyes that had seen too much to judge. Her heels clicked against hardwood like a metronome as she settled behind her desk, arranging papers with deliberate precision. The sound of folders opening echoed like gunshots in the thick silence. The words, when they came, fell like bombs in slow motion. HIV-positive. Recent infection. Further tests needed. Each phrase struck with surgical precision, cutting through the carefully maintained facade of normal life. Thad watched his wife crumple inward, her shoulders curving as though to protect herself from physical blows. His own mind had gone eerily quiet, the kind of silence that descended in combat situations when the world narrowed to tactical assessments and survival calculations. 6 months. He'd been gone 6 months. The timeline stretched between them like an accusation. Dr. Frost's voice continued, professional and detached, discussing viral loads and treatment options. But Thad was already assembling pieces of a puzzle, he hadn't known existed until this moment. The cologne. The missing flowers. The gym membership. Roman. The drive home unfolded in suspended animation. Memphis summer heat shimmered off the pavement, distorting the world beyond the car windows into something unrecognizable. Savannah sat rigid in the passenger seat, her face turned away, watching the familiar streets of their life scroll past like scenes from someone else's story. The air conditioning blasted Arctic cold but couldn't touch the fever building in Thad's blood. Their kitchen, with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, had always been Savannah's domain. Now it felt like an interrogation room as they sat at the breakfast bar, the morning's coffee gone cold between them. The silence stretched until it snapped. Savannah's confession emerged in fragments, each word seeming to cause her physical pain. The loneliness. The gym membership. The personal training sessions that became something more. She spoke of Roman like speaking of a dream, something not quite real until named. But she swore, with increasing desperation, that they'd been careful. Protected. It wasn't possible. The sound of a door closing upstairs cut through her explanations. Meadow stood frozen on the staircase, her face a mask of teenage defiance barely concealing raw fear. Behind her, Phoenix lingered in the shadows, 13 and trying desperately to disappear. The family tableau held for one brittle moment before shattering. Meadow's reaction was wrong. Not shocked. Not confused. Wrong. She looked at her mother not with surprise but with a strange mixture of guilt and vindication. Her hand clutched her phone like a lifeline, thumbs flying over the keys even as she backed away from her parents' stares. A text notification ping echoed through the house as she fled, the sound following her retreat like digital breadcrumbs. Phoenix remained, a silent witness absorbing scenes no child should have to process. Thad saw himself reflected in his son's eyes. A stranger returning home to find his life had become a crime scene. With gentle words, he sent the boy to his room, promising explanations that would never be adequate. The house settled into uneasy silence as afternoon sun slanted through windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like evidence of lives disturbed. Thad moved through the rooms with tactical precision, his combat training repurposed for domestic investigation. Every drawer, every closet, every hidden space revealed new chapters of the story he'd missed while driving endless highways. In Savannah's bedside table, beneath carefully folded lingerie, a burner phone lay like a black beetle. The call history told its own story, one number, contacted multiple times daily, always during his long absences. Text messages painted pictures he couldn't unread, assignations at the elite fitness private studios, meetings in hotel rooms, promises and passions and photographs that burned his retinas. The credit card statements completed the picture. Charges at boutiques he'd never heard of, lingerie he'd never seen, hotel rooms booked under the pretense of girls' nights out. Roman's name appeared like a signature at the bottom of gym membership receipts, personal training sessions that extended far beyond normal hours. Elite fitness lived up to its name in cost, but the real price was yet to be calculated. Hidden behind winter sweaters in the guest room closet, a showbox contained the final pieces. Hotel key cards, carefully preserved. Restaurant receipts for intimate dinners. Movie ticket stubs for shows watched by lovers instead of husband and wife. A small velvet jewelry box containing a diamond tennis bracelet, the sort of gift a personal trainer shouldn't be able to afford. Each discovery was a bullet point in an indictment, evidence mounting toward conclusions that turned Thad's blood to ice. The HIV diagnosis wasn't just a medical crisis. It was the tip of an iceberg of betrayal that went deeper than mere infidelity. The regular testing required for his commercial driver's license had come back clean just 2 weeks ago. The infection was recent, but more importantly, it wasn't from him. As evening gathered in the corners of the house, Thad sat in his home office surrounded by the artifacts of his wife's deception. The burner phone lay silent now, its screen dark with secrets. He'd read every message, traced every call, mapped out every rendezvous with military precision. But one detail nagged at his tactical mind, Meadow's reaction. The lack of surprise. The guilty glances. The furious texting. His daughter knew something. Something beyond her mother's affair. Something that made the HIV diagnosis more than just the result of marital infidelity. Upstairs, he could hear Savannah's muffled sobs through the master bedroom door. Down the hall, Meadow's music thumped with teenage angst while Phoenix's video game gunfire provided covering sound for a family at war. Thad reached for his own phone, pulling up the number for his old army buddy who'd become a private investigator. Tomorrow, he would begin assembling the full picture of what had happened in his 6-month absence. But tonight, he sat in deepening darkness, surrounded by evidence of how thoroughly a life could be destroyed by secrets and distance and trust misplaced. The doctor's words echoed in his mind. Recent infection. The timeline stretched before him like a fuse, leading to an explosion that would destroy everything he'd spent his life building. As Memphis traffic hummed beyond his windows, Thad Ryker began planning a different kind of long haul, one that would end in either truth or tragedy. Elite fitness rose from the upscale Memphis suburb like a modernist temple, all glass and steel reaching toward the morning sky. Thad sat in his rental car across the street, watching through high-powered binoculars as the early morning crowd trickled in. 3 days of surveillance had taught him the rhythm of the place and the habits of Roman Blackwood. The gym's owner arrived each day in a midnight blue Porsche, the kind of vehicle that screamed new money and borrowed time. Roman emerged like a perfectly crafted specimen, 6'2" of sculpted muscle wrapped in designer workout gear, salt and pepper hair artfully styled despite the pre-dawn hour. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never lost a fight or faced a truly dangerous opponent. The surveillance footage from Thad's PI friend told the rest of the story. Roman's private training sessions with Savannah, captured through discreet cameras, showed a predator's patience. The lingering touches, the whispered conversations, the way he positioned her body under the guise of correcting form. The gym's security cameras, accessed through carefully applied pressure on a young IT worker, revealed after-hours meetings that had nothing to do with fitness. Watching the footage, Thad's military-trained mind catalogued weaknesses, points of entry, potential weapons. But it was the background check that painted the full picture. Roman Blackwood was a carefully constructed facade. Before Memphis, there had been similar gyms in Atlanta, Nashville, Houston, each sold under mysterious circumstances, each departure followed by whispered scandals and sealed court documents. A pattern emerged: wealthy married women, broken marriages, unexplained transfers of money. Roman wasn't just a trainer who crossed lines. He was a professional predator. The revelation about Meadow came through a different surveillance target. Her boyfriend Axel had caught Thad's attention through a series of late-night meetings at a cafe near the university campus. 19, a freshman on academic scholarship, ambitious but with shadows in his past. The Pies investigation revealed the connection that turned Thad's blood to ice. Axel had been a member at Roman's previous gym in Atlanta, working part-time as a towel boy. The HIV diagnosis timeline suddenly aligned with horrifying clarity. Memphis summer heat pressed down like a physical weight as Thad parked outside the medical records department. His friend in Army intelligence had taught him that official channels often had unofficial bypasses. A carefully forged document, a sympathetic clerk, and Axel's medical history lay bare. HIV-positive, diagnosed 3 months ago, likely infected months earlier. The dates matched perfectly with Meadow's increasingly erratic behavior, her guilty glances, her frantic text messages. The confrontation with Savannah unfolded in their kitchen as evening shadows lengthened across the granite countertops. Thad laid out the evidence like setting up a tactical map: surveillance photos, medical records, background reports. Each piece of paper a bullet in the execution of their marriage. Savannah's composure cracked like fine porcelain under artillery fire, her carefully maintained facade crumbling into raw, ugly truth. Yes, she had fallen for Roman's practiced seduction. Yes, she had used their joint savings to invest in his gym expansion plans. But she swore she hadn't known about Axel, about the connection to Meadow, about any of it. Her sobs echoed off the expensive appliances they'd bought with trucking money, each cry a testament to destruction wrought by desire and deception. Roman's response to Thad's warning call came with the arrogant confidence of a man who had never faced real consequences. His voice dripped with condescension as he suggested they handle this like gentlemen. The threat beneath his words was clear. He had evidence of Savannah's indiscretions, photos that could destroy what remained of their family's reputation. He didn't realize he was threatening a man who had nothing left to lose. Meadow's confession came last, dragged out by the weight of accumulated evidence. She sat at the kitchen table, her teenage defiance finally cracking under the pressure of adult consequences. Yes, she had known about her mother and Roman. Yes, she had met Axel through him. No, she hadn't known about the HIV until after the unprotected encounters, after the missed periods, after the home pregnancy test showed positive in the gym bathroom. The violence brewing beneath Thad's skin reached fever pitch as the full picture emerged. Roman had orchestrated all of it. Seducing Savannah, introducing Meadow to Axel, weaving a web of destruction around their family while extracting money and satisfaction from their pain. The predator had marked their family, never expecting to encounter someone trained in actual hunting. Phoenix watched it all from the shadows of the staircase, his 13-year-old face aged decades by the weight of adult secrets. The video game gunfire from his room had gone silent, replaced by the real sounds of a family imploding. His presence was a reminder of collateral damage, of innocence shattered by the shrapnel of adult desires. As midnight approached, Thad sat in his home office surrounded by the evidence of his family's destruction. The surveillance photos seemed to glow in the darkness, each image a snapshot of betrayal. Upstairs, Savannah's sobs had finally quieted. Meadow's room pulsed with angry music. Phoenix's light still burned, his shadow occasionally passing across the crack beneath his door like a ghost haunting their broken home. The pieces were all in place now. Roman's calculated predation, Savannah's willing submission, Meadow's terrible connection through Axel, the virus spreading through their family like a physical manifestation of sin. The only question remaining was what to do with this knowledge. Thad's military training offered solutions his civilian life had never contemplated. Violence hung in the air like the promise of an approaching storm. In the distance, thunder rolled across the Memphis sky, nature providing percussion for the drama unfolding in their suburban home. Thad's phone buzzed with a text from Roman, another veiled threat wrapped in false civility. On his desk, Meadow's medical records lay next to Savannah's HIV test results, a paper trail of destruction. The time for investigation was over. Now was the time for action. Outside, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, washing away the summer heat but not the fever building in Thad's blood. He had driven thousands of miles on America's highways, but the longest journey lay ahead, the distance between discovering truth and delivering justice. As lightning split the sky, Thad Ryker began preparing for war. Storm McAllister's hunting cabin sat 20 miles outside Memphis, hidden among dense trees and forgotten promises. Inside, Thad spread his plans across a scarred wooden table, the pages illuminated by a single overhead bulb. Topographic maps of the elite fitness grounds, building schematics acquired through carefully cultivated contacts, surveillance photos showing Roman's daily routine, each element a piece of the tactical puzzle he was assembling. Storm watched from his position by the window, his trucker's frame casting long shadows in the dim light. 20 years of friendship and shared combat experiences had taught him to read Thad's moods. The methodical way his friend arranged the documents, the precise attention to detail. This wasn't planning, this was preparation for war. The weapons lay cleaned and ready on an adjacent workbench. A Glock 19 with modified sights, a K-bar combat knife that had seen action in Fallujah, zip ties and duct tape arranged with military precision. Each item chosen for utility, for silence, for the absence of evidence they would leave behind. The hunting cabin's walls absorbed their whispered strategizing like confessions in a church. Across town, Roman's obsession with Savannah spiraled into dangerous territory. Security cameras captured their encounters growing bolder, no longer confined to after-hours training sessions but spilling into daylight hours. The gym's parking lot, a downtown restaurant, even the park where Thad had once pushed his children on swings. Roman marked his territory like a predator, leaving deliberate signs for Thad to find. Savannah wearing expensive jewelry during their encounters, receipts for hotel rooms left visible in her car. The blackmail threats arrived with calculated timing, photographs of intimate moments, bank statements showing transferred funds, text messages that would destroy what remained of their family's reputation. Roman wielded them like weapons, each revelation a bullet aimed at Thad's remaining restraint. But he had miscalculated badly. Men who drove 18-wheelers through mountain passes in snowstorms didn't frighten easily. Men who had fought house to house in Iraqi cities understood that fear was a choice. Savannah's behavior grew increasingly erratic as July burned toward August. The careful housewife facade crumbled completely, replaced by someone Thad barely recognized. She stayed out late without explanations, returned home with bruises she couldn't hide, jumped at every phone notification like an addict anticipating their next fix. The woman who had once carefully coordinated their children's schedules now forgot to buy groceries, missed parent-teacher conferences, lived in a haze of chemical-assisted detachment. But it was Meadow's situation that pushed everything toward its inevitable conclusion. The pregnancy test results lay on Thad's desk like a live grenade, its implications radiating outward in waves of destruction. 17 years old, HIV-positive, carrying the child of a man who had been deliberately inserted into her life by her mother's lover. The geometric progression of betrayal was almost beautiful in its complexity. Axel's panic manifested in increasingly desperate text messages, captured by the spyware Thad had installed on Meadow's phone. The college freshman's carefully constructed future, scholarship, pre-med dreams, escape from his past connection to Roman, all crumbling under the weight of consequences. His messages swung between threats and pleading, each one carefully archived as evidence of his deteriorating mental state. In the sterile confines of Dr. Frost's office, the full scope of the disaster unfurled in medical terminology and carefully worded warnings. The virus had been present in Axel's system for months before detection. The probability of transmission to the unborn child hovered like a statistical sword of Damocles. Meadow sat through these consultations in stone-faced silence, one hand protectively curved around her still flat stomach, the other clutching her phone as it buzzed with Axel's increasingly unhinged messages. Phoenix, watching from the sidelines with 13-year-old clarity, began sleeping with a baseball bat beside his bed. The sounds of his family's destruction carried through the vents. Savannah's late-night sobbing, Meadow's angry phone conversations, Thad's methodical movements as he prepared for what was coming. The boy understood more than anyone realized, had seen the weapons his father cleaned when he thought everyone was asleep. The plan crystallized over endless cups of coffee in Storm's cabin. The timing had to be perfect, the alibis unbreakable. Storm would ensure Thad's truck appeared to be hundreds of miles away when everything happened. The weapons would never be found. The evidence would point to a tragic confrontation between lovers, a domestic dispute gone wrong, a young man's desperate act followed by suicide. The truth would be buried beneath layers of plausible deniability. Roman's arrogance made him an easy target. His routines were predictable: early morning workouts before the gym opened, evening meetings with his accountant, late-night encounters with Savannah in a suite at the Peabody. He moved through Memphis like he owned it, never noticing the shadows that tracked his movements, catalogued his weaknesses, marked the places where he was most vulnerable. Surveillance photos covered one entire wall of the cabin now. Roman spotting Savannah on weight machines, his hands lingering too long. Roman and Axel in intense conversation behind the gym, money changing hands. Roman watching Meadow leave school, his expression carrying echoes of how he looked at her mother. Each image a justification, each moment captured building toward the only possible conclusion. The weapons felt natural in Thad's hands as he practiced in the cabin's backyard. The Glock's weight was familiar, the knife's balance perfect. His body remembered the training, the countless hours of close-quarters combat drills. Some skills never left you, just waited patiently until they were needed again. Storm watched his friend's transformation with growing concern. The easygoing trucker disappeared, replaced by the soldier he'd known in Iraq. Thad's movements became more economical. His voice dropped to a combat whisper. His eyes took on the 1,000-yard stare of a man already living in the aftermath of violence. As July's heat pressed down on Memphis like a smothering blanket, the pieces of Thad's plan locked into place. The cabin's wall held the full tableau of destruction. Surveillance photos, medical records, bank statements, text messages, a paper trail leading to inevitable violence. 2 men had to die. The only variables were timing and method. Outside, summer storms gathered on the horizon, thunder rolling across Tennessee like distant artillery. Inside the cabin, Thad cleaned his weapons one final time, each movement precise and practiced. The time for investigation was over. The evidence was clear. Roman had destroyed his family with calculated precision. Axel had been his weapon. Now Thad would show them both what real violence looked like. What happened when you pushed a man trained in dealing death past his breaking point? The only question remaining was who would die first, and how much they would suffer before the end. Detective Ravencross's office at Memphis PD had become a shrine to destruction, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights that made every photo seem more stark, more brutal. Crime scene photos wallpapered entire sections. Roman's body reflected infinitely in gym mirrors. Axel's too-perfect suicide scene. Both deaths connected by invisible threads only she could see. 3 weeks of investigation had transformed her whiteboard into a spider's web of relationships, timelines, and carefully plotted coincidences that somehow all led back to the Ryker family. The breakthrough came through Storm McAllister's truck stop receipt, buried in a stack of seemingly perfect alibi evidence. One small detail, a coffee purchased hundreds of miles away, paid with a card that showed a different location's security footage at the exact same timestamp. The anomaly was tiny, a microscopic crack in an otherwise flawless facade, but in Cross's experience, perfect alibis often hid imperfect truths. Under intense questioning, Storm's loyalty finally cracked like thin ice beneath heavy weight. His confession spilled out in the sterile interrogation room, each word another nail in Thad's coffin. The recording captured every detail of how a trusted friend had watched a family man transform into a calculated killer. Storm's voice broke as he described helping plan the murders, creating the alibis, watching his brother-in-arms disappear beneath a mask of vengeance. Behind the two-way glass, Cross watched a friendship of 20 years dissolve into evidence. The investigation exploded outward from there, each new revelation adding layers to an already complex tragedy. Elite Fitness's financial records revealed the full scope of Roman's predation. Dozens of women systematically targeted, hundreds of thousands in extracted funds, a pattern of destruction that spanned multiple cities. Bank statements told stories of emptied accounts, forged signatures, lives financially ruined alongside marriages destroyed. Each revelation added another layer to Thad's motivation, another justification for calculated revenge. Savannah broke under questioning in interview room 3, her carefully maintained facade crumbling into raw truth beneath fluorescent lights. The affair's timeline emerged in bloody detail. First meeting at the gym during a moment of weakness, initial resistance crumbling under practice seduction, hotel rooms and secret phones and money transferred from family accounts. But it was her revelation about Roman's connection to Axel that sealed Thad's fate. A calculated introduction, a deliberate infection, a multi-generational revenge plot that had backfired in ways no one could have predicted. The HIV transmission path formed a perfect triangle of destruction, each point marked by deliberate malice. Medical records confirmed that Roman had known his status for years, had deliberately infected multiple partners across multiple cities, had used the virus as a weapon of control and destruction. Axel had been one of his victims in Atlanta, before Memphis, before Meadow. The virus had spread through their family like a physical manifestation of betrayal, marking each connection with permanent consequences that would echo through generations. Meadow's testimony, given through tears in a juvenile interview room painted cheerful colors that couldn't hide its purpose, completed the picture. She had known about her mother's affair, had witnessed secret meetings, had been introduced to Axel through Roman's careful orchestration. The pregnancy test results lay on the interview table like physical evidence of generational destruction, a future shaped by the sins of others. The arrests came at dawn, tactical teams surrounding the Ryker home with overwhelming force. Memphis SWAT deployed with precision, their black vehicles stark against suburban landscaping. Thad offered no resistance as they led him away in handcuffs, his military bearing evident even in surrender. His face betrayed no emotion as Detective Cross read the charges. 2 counts of premeditated murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering. The warrior's mask he had worn since combat had become his only expression. Savannah watched from the front door as they took her husband away, designer clothes replaced by a worn bathrobe, perfectly maintained hair now streaked with premature gray. The neighbors gathered on manicured lawns to witness the spectacle, smartphones recording every moment of the family's final destruction. Their whispers carried on the morning air like poison, affair, HIV, murder, revenge. Each word another bullet in the execution of their social standing. Memphis media descended like vultures on carrion, cameras and microphones thrust into shocked faces. The story had everything: sex, betrayal, HIV, murder. A perfect storm of tragedy that boosted ratings and sold papers. Local news led with Thad's service photo next to his mugshot. Roman's gym promotional pictures beside crime scene photos. Axel's suicide note was dissected on morning shows, experts debating its authenticity while missing its deeper truth. Each broadcast added another layer of public humiliation to private pain. Elite Fitness stood empty now, its windows covered with newspapers, its parking lot collecting wind-blown debris like tumbleweeds in a ghost town. The other trainers had scattered, finding new positions at other gyms, distancing themselves from Roman's toxic legacy. Former clients whispered about warning signs they should have seen, signals they had ignored, red flags dismissed in pursuit of perfect bodies and dangerous dreams. The university campus held candlelight vigils for Axel, students who had never known him alive now experts in his tragic story. His scholarship fund was quietly discontinued, his academic achievements overshadowed by the circumstances of his death. The truth of his connection to Roman, to Meadow, to the virus that had marked them all, remained sealed in police records but leaked in fragments through student gossip and social media speculation. In the sterile confines of juvenile court, Meadow's future was decided by strangers in black robes who could never understand the full scope of her tragedy. The pregnancy would be monitored under state care, the baby tested for HIV after birth, her education continued through special programs for teen mothers. Phoenix would live with relatives in Nashville, removed from the blast radius of his family's implosion, his teenage years forever marked by his father's choices. Storm McAllister's plea deal earned him 15 years in a medium-security facility. He would drive trucks only in prison yards now, his loyalty to Thad costing him everything except his life. In his confession, he spoke of watching his friend transform from trusted brother-in-arms to methodical killer, of seeing the soldier emerge from beneath the family man's skin like a butterfly of vengeance and violence. The trial became Memphis's obsession, each day bringing new revelations and shocking details. Medical experts testified about HIV transmission rates and infection timelines. Financial analysts detailed Roman schemes, the money trail leading through multiple states. Computer forensics exposed the carefully planted evidence, the digital breadcrumbs that had led from elite fitness to college dorm to suburban home. Through it all, Thad sat stone-faced, the perfect soldier maintaining his final mission. The verdict brought no satisfaction, no sense of justice served. 2 life sentences without possibility of parole seemed inadequate measure of lives destroyed, futures erased, families shattered. Detective Cross stood in the courtroom as Thad's military bearing finally cracked, not at the verdict, but at the sight of Meadow in the gallery, her pregnancy now visible beneath loose clothing, her future forever marked by the choices of others. Memphis moved on, as cities do, but the scars remained. Elite Fitness became a discount furniture store, its mirrors replaced by shelving units that couldn't reflect the past. The university erected a mental health awareness plaque that didn't mention Axel's name. Detective Cross kept the case file in her desk drawer, occasionally reviewing the details of how love and betrayal and violence had destroyed 3 generations of lives. The story lived on in whispers, in cautionary tales, in the collective memory of a city that had witnessed the destruction of a family through desire, deception, and disease. In the end, there were no heroes, no villains, only victims of choices that rippled outward like blood in water, staining
Detective
everything
Raven
they touched
Cross's
with permanent
office at
consequences
Memphis
that would
PD
echo through
had become a shrine
generations
to
yet unborn.
destruction.
Crime scene photos wallpapered entire sections. Roman's body reflected infinitely in gym mirrors, Axel's too-perfect suicide scene, both deaths connected by invisible threads only she could see. 3 weeks of investigation had transformed her whiteboard into a spider's web of relationships, timelines, and carefully plotted coincidences. The breakthrough came through Storm McAllister's truck stop receipt. One small detail, a coffee purchased hundreds of miles away, paid with a card that showed a different location's security footage. The anomaly was tiny, but in Cross's experience, perfect alibis often hid imperfect truths. Under intense questioning, Storm's loyalty finally cracked like thin ice beneath heavy weight. His confession spilled out in the sterile interrogation room, each word another nail in Thad's coffin. Yes, he had helped plan the murders. Yes, he had created the alibis. Yes, he had watched his friend transform from trusted family man to calculated killer. The recording captured every detail. Every moment Storm had witnessed Thad's descent into violence. The investigation exploded outward from there. Elite Fitness's financial records revealed the full scope of Roman's predation. Dozens of women, hundreds of thousands in extracted funds, a pattern of destruction that spanned multiple cities. Each revelation added another layer to Thad's motivation, another justification for calculated revenge. Savannah broke under questioning, her carefully maintained facade crumbling into raw truth. The affair's timeline emerged in bloody detail. First meeting at the gym, initial resistance crumbling under practice seduction, hotel rooms and secret phones and money transferred from family accounts. But it was her revelation about Roman's connection to Axel that sealed Thad's fate. The HIV transmission path formed a perfect triangle of destruction. Roman had known his status, had deliberately infected multiple partners across multiple cities. Axel had been one of his victims in Atlanta, before Memphis, before Meadow. The virus had spread through their family like a physical manifestation of betrayal, marking each connection with permanent consequences. Meadow's testimony, given through tears in a juvenile interview room, completed the picture. She had known about her mother's affair, had witnessed secret meetings, had been introduced to Axel through Roman's careful orchestration. The pregnancy test results lay on the interview table like physical evidence of generational destruction. The arrests came at dawn, tactical teams surrounding the Ryker home with overwhelming force. Thad offered no resistance as they led him away in handcuffs. His face betrayed no emotion as Detective Cross read the charges. 2 counts of premeditated murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering. The warrior's mask he had worn since combat had become his only expression. Savannah watched from the front door as they took her husband away, designer clothes replaced by a worn bathrobe, perfectly maintained hair now streaked with premature gray. The neighbors gathered on manicured lawns to witness the spectacle, smartphones recording every moment of the family's final destruction. Their whispers carried on the morning air like poison. Memphis media descended like vultures on carrion. The story had everything: sex, betrayal, HIV, murder. Local news led with Thad's service photo next to his mugshot, Roman's gym promotional pictures beside crime scene photos. Axel's suicide note was dissected on morning shows, experts debating its authenticity while missing its deeper truth. Elite Fitness stood empty now, its windows covered with newspapers, its parking lot collecting wind-blown debris. The other trainers had scattered, finding new positions at other gyms, distancing themselves from Roman's toxic legacy. Former clients whispered about warning signs they should have seen, signals they had ignored, red flags dismissed in pursuit of perfect bodies. The university campus held candlelight vigils for Axel, students who had never known him alive now experts in his tragic story. His scholarship fund was quietly discontinued, his academic achievements overshadowed by the circumstances of his death. The truth of his connection to Roman, to Meadow, to the virus that had marked them all, remained sealed in police records. In the sterile confines of juvenile court, Meadow's future was decided by strangers in black robes. The pregnancy would be monitored under state care, the baby tested for HIV after birth, her education continued through special programs for teen mothers. Phoenix would live with relatives in Nashville, removed from the blast radius of his family's implosion. Storm McAllister's plea deal earned him 15 years. He would drive trucks only in prison yards now, his loyalty to Thad costing him everything except his life. In his confession, he spoke of watching his friend transform from trusted brother-in-arms to methodical killer, of seeing the soldier emerge from beneath the family man's skin. The trial became Memphis's obsession. Every detail was dissected: the affair, the virus, the murders. Medical experts testified about HIV transmission rates. Financial analysts detailed Roman's schemes. Computer forensics exposed the carefully planted evidence. Through it all, Thad sat stone-faced, the perfect soldier maintaining his final mission. Savannah's testimony against her husband earned her immunity but cost her everything else. The community that had once embraced her now turned its back. Her real estate license was quietly revoked. Former friends crossed streets to avoid her. She retreated into her empty house, surrounded by memories of a life destroyed by desire and deception. Detective Cross stood in the courtroom as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. 2 life sentences without possibility of parole. She watched Thad's military bearing as they led him away, saw the moment his mask finally cracked. Not at the verdict, but at the sight of Meadow in the gallery, her pregnancy now visible beneath loose clothing, her future forever marked by the choices of others. The Memphis summer faded into fall, taking with it the last traces of the Ryker family's former life. Their house sold at auction, the proceeds split between legal fees and restitution. Savannah moved to Atlanta, seeking anonymity among strangers. Phoenix thrived in Nashville, his teenage resilience helping him build a new life away from tragedy. Meadow's child was born in the winter, a girl who tested negative for HIV but positive for the weight of her family's choices. She would grow up knowing only fragments of her origin story, protected from the full truth by sealed records and changed names. The virus that had catalyzed everything remained dormant in her mother's blood, a permanent reminder of consequences. In his prison cell, Thad Ryker maintained his military discipline. He did not appeal, did not seek redemption, did not offer explanations. The warrior who had emerged in that summer of betrayal remained in control, accepting his fate as the final mission of a soldier who had gone to war for his family and lost everything in victory. Memphis moved on, as cities do. Elite Fitness became a discount furniture store. The university erected a mental health awareness plaque that didn't mention Axel's name. Detective Cross kept the case file in her desk drawer, occasionally reviewing the details of how love and betrayal and violence had destroyed 3 generations of lives. The story lived on in whispers, in cautionary tales, in the collective memory of a city that had witnessed the destruction of a family through desire, deception, and disease. In the end, there were no heroes, no villains, only victims of choices that rippled outward like blood in water, staining everything they touched with permanent consequences.